Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of the amendment before us. I want to start by saying that I associate my remarks with my colleagues, Senator Kissel and Senator Champagne. I think they did a tremendous job of outlining what is happening here in this amendment. And I rise also, Madam President, because I feel like it's incumbent upon me, since I was involved in the first debate on the clean slate bill, to just say a few words about what's happening here in this amendment. Partly for my own constituents and partly for the members of the House of Representatives who may take up that bill and this bill, because in combination they will work together to make the policy of the state. As far as my constituents, I got to tell a little story, which is that I have been receiving correspondence from a constituent of mine, someone I have been going back and forth with on countless issues for maybe a decade. And this person and I don't necessarily agree on much. But we've always had a very cordial and respectful dialogue between us. And I think she's even come around on a number of issues. But most recently, I've received several emails from her essentially suggesting that my comments on the clean slate bill were completely biased, false, even racist, and that the purpose of my commentary the other day was to misinform, to tell people something that is completely untrue, to distort what was actually happening in that bill. And I've got to tell you, Madam President, you can accuse me of a lot of things. I am a passionate person. I am here for passionate reasons. I will fight for what I believe in every day of the week. But one thing I will never do is distort my opponent's record. I will not try and use politics to frame an argument against them. My belief in politics has always been the same thing, which is we should tell the truth about our positions and even our opponents' positions and let the people decide. And I've tried to do that every step of my political career. And I will continue to do that. But I'm afraid, Madam President, that that is not what always is conveyed either by each of us simply by omission or by the press, because they don't necessarily have the whole story. So I'm getting up simply to make sure that the whole story is before the public and before the House of Representatives, before they make a determination on what is good and what is not as far as public policy in our state. The House of Representatives is going to take up the original clean slate bill, I imagine, which we debated the other day, and I assume that they're going to do it in some sort of arrangement that it is in conjunction with this bill, so everyone is on the same page. What happened, for anyone watching, is that during the debate on the clean slate bill, which in simplest terms, it is a bill designed to erase someone who's been incarcerated, their criminal record after a period of time. And depending on whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor, it might be 7 years or 10 years. I stated from the outset that this is a policy that I could very much be in favor of. I want more than I can describe in a few words here today, Madam President, for people to be able to re-enter society. I think it does not benefit our society in any way, shape, or form if people serve their time and then cannot re-enter society successfully by getting a job or a place to live or being able to function like the rest of us. So I want to help as much as I possibly can. The thing is that the clean slate bill, and it's funny because when you talk to the advocates that are standing outside the building when you walk in the morning, they have the same impression that I did about clean slate, which is this bill is supposed to be about minor drug offenses. If that's what this bill was, the clean slate bill I'm referring to, then I don't think anyone would have said a word about it. We would have said, yes, that's completely true. We should not be penalizing people ad nauseum forever because they had a joint in their car or something like that at some point when they were younger. That's just ridiculous. Even more significant drug offenses in the cities that have ruined lives could be treated in a different way. I'm okay with all of that. But what I was not okay with the other day was the serious nature of many of the offenses that were going to be included in that erasure process. And for people listening, I want them to understand this is a permanent erasure. This is not just, we're not going to count these things in the future. We're not going to weigh this against someone. We're talking about erasing it permanently from the record. That's not to say that you couldn't find out something happened. The press may have reported it. There may be a record out there somewhere. But someone doing a background check would not be able to see it. The courts are not going to maintain these records, at least not in a way that makes them accessible. That's a significant, significant policy decision for any legislature and any government to make. And the crimes that were included in that bill were significant, which is why I took the trouble, along with some of my colleagues, to draft amendments to highlight each one of those crimes and how significant they were, and to point it out to the proponents of the bill that, look, please give us a chance to vote in favor of a bill that makes sense by taking out these things that are simply egregious. I won't get into the whole list of what they are. Many of them are addressed in the amendment before us by reversing the policy. I just wish, Madam President, that when someone like me gets up in this chamber from the minority and offers an amendment on a bill in the future, rather than go through this process of ignoring every amendment, shooting them all down, and having to come back later because we realize that, geez, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, that we really pay attention to folks in this chamber that are trying to make good policy the best they can. I totally get it. When one party has a significant majority, they really don't need the input of the minority. And I don't mean to suggest that the minority's input is never taken, because that's not true. I have a good relationship with many folks in this chamber in both parties. Yesterday, I had a great dialogue on a GAA bill with my colleague, Senator Flexer, where we worked together to come up with a much better work product. That can happen a lot more often, Madam President. What I want is for us to take each other sincerely, and then when we're offering an amendment on the floor, yeah, sometimes it's politics, but a lot of times it's simply an honest gesture to get us to a point of bipartisanship where we're actually working for our constituents to make a better policy in the end. So rather than continue taking up time of this this great body, that's not my point tonight. I wanted to just get into what exactly is happening in the bill. I am very thankful that this amendment goes ahead and takes several of the items that were going to be erased and removes the policy that they would be erased via this amendment. And those were the most egregious items, there's no doubt. Assault in the second degree with a firearm, assault of an elderly, blind, disabled, or pregnant person, strangulation, possessing child pornography, on and on and on. These were egregious things that we should never have considered erasing to begin with. And I am very pleased, Madam President, that it appears to me that we are not going to allow that to become law. And that's why I'm so much in favor of the amendment. But what I want people to understand, both my constituents, my friend Cecilia, who I correspond with, and the members of the House of Representatives, is that even if this amendment is adopted, they should not support that clean slate bill. Not in its current form, because it still goes too far. I have a list before me, Madam President, of a very lengthy number of offenses that are still what I consider to be beyond egregious when it comes to saying that we are going to erase these from the record permanently. And I believe that if our constituents knew what these items were, and I also believe that if the members of the House of Representatives looked at them thoroughly, regardless of whether they are Republicans or Democrats, they might think twice about whether these are good policies or not. And I just want to run through this list very, very briefly. This is a good amendment. This fixes a great deal of what was wrong with that bill, but it does not fix everything. Even with this amendment, the clean slate bill, if it passes the House and becomes law, even with these things taken out, the following items will still be erased from someone's record. Assault, second degree, that's 53A-60. Assault, second degree with a motor vehicle while under the influence. I don't know that the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers would see it the same way. I don't think they would agree that someone should be able to have that erased from their record at any point in the future. Bribe receiving by a labor official, bribery of a labor official. I'm skipping over many of these too. I just highlighted ones that stuck out to me. Criminal damage to a landlord's property, first degree. We're going to ask landlords in the clean slate bill to never, ever know that someone committed that crime. That's not fair. You cannot do that to a landlord who is going to put someone in their property and not know that they had committed a crime exactly like this in the past. Forgery, second degree. Harassment, first degree. Identity theft, third degree. Impersonation of a police officer. Insurance fraud. There's always a question on an insurance application whether or not you've committed insurance fraud. There is a question on an application to become a licensed insurance agent in the state. Is that something that someone would have to say yes or no to? I don't know, but it concerns me. Interfering with an officer, which causes death or serious physical injury. Intimidation based on bigotry or bias. Money laundering. I could go on for many, many more of these, Madam President. I'm going to list another dozen or so, but you get the idea. There are serious crimes here. Criminal violation of a protective order, criminal violation of a restraining order, criminal violation of a standing criminal protective order, possession of a weapon on school grounds, Madam President, promoting prostitution, third degree, weapon in a motor vehicle, organized retail theft, cruelty to persons under 19 in someone's care and custody done intentionally, abandonment of a child under 6 years old, cruelty to animals. I know many of my colleagues associate cruelty to animals with some type of behavior that might happen later in life, and yet we're going to erase that here. We have other bills, Madam President, where we are tracking cruelty to animals because we're concerned that folks that commit those crimes might later do something to human beings that might be significant. And this would erase the records of cruelty to animals. And that includes cruelty to animals, making dogs or chickens fight, injury to canine or search dogs. We passed a bill earlier today in this chamber that strengthened the penalty for intentionally harming a police or a search dog. How can we do that on the same day that we're going to omit this from our correction? Tampering with a juror. Is that something that should go away from your criminal past? I don't think it should ever go away. I'm sorry. Threatening in the first degree. Threatening second degree. Purchase of a firearm with intent to transfer to a person prohibited from purchasing a firearm. This is trafficking in firearms. Not something that should go away. Negligent homicide with a motor vehicle. Again, there's a long, long list. Most of those, yes, I cherry-picked them out of the Class D felonies. But there were many, many other Class D felonies I did not mention that are just as egregious, and there are many, many more crimes beyond that that I think most people would agree are worth considering. I have a suggestion, Madam President, and that is that if we are going to try and pass clean slate legislation as a legislature in Connecticut in 2021, let's itemize the things that are actually worthy of erasing instead of making a blanket erasure and then trying to carve out a few items from it. I think that would make a lot more sense. I will support the amendment, and I will support the bill, assuming that's the way it remains throughout. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Sampson. Will